Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first video lecture that we have for this semester. This is obviously going to be chapter 1 for comparative politics, and it's going to be a little bit of an intro. There's going to be a lot of base level definitions. Some of these definitions might not actually be new to you guys at all, since you guys are poli-sci majors. You probably heard them in your intro classes, so some of this might feel like review at some point. Okay, but let's go ahead and get through this. Some key concepts that we're going to look at. Comparative politics relies on comparative method to construct and test hypotheses. So we're going to look at the actual statistics within political science in this class. And there's long running debates on whether or not we can make this more scientific. Okay, it's only two different methods that we really use: quantitative and then qualitative method. Okay, we'll take a look at political institutions and how they affect political activity, and then we're also going to analyze freedom and equity across countries. Okay, now remember, I'm not going to go into everything in detail that your textbook says. I'm just going to highlight what I think is the most important thing. So here, let's go ahead and we'll move myself over to this right side. Also, I apologize for me not having this video up sooner. I've been setting up my OBS. Okay. So basic terms you should know: institutions. Okay. They're going to be organizations that are self-perpetuating and valued for their own sake. So an example of this is going to be like the post office. It doesn't always have to be like a physical building, though. Okay, your textbook goes over that. Like, institutions can be things such as like values that get thrown out there. Okay, politics is obviously something basic as well. The way I like to break politics down is just groups of people coming together for a collective action. They're trying to make decisions together for the better of the whole group. Now, power is going to be the ability to influence individuals or impose your will on them. Now, in order to be successful in politics, you need to be able to have a legitimate use of authority. Okay, the three that your textbook recognizes that exist within political science are going to be traditional, charismatic, and rational. Okay, we'll go over those in more detail on a separate slide. Now, what is comparative politics? Okay, obviously you should know this definition. It's going to be the study and comparison of domestic politics across countries. Okay, your textbook will give us plenty of examples of comparing countries. Whether it is elections, whether it's politics, whether it is the form of government. Now, another field of politics where there's research that takes place is going to be something called international relations. Okay, but it's going to be separate, and your textbook actually analyzes this. So you guys, a lot of you in the political science major or pathways, you will take an international relations class, or you already have, but comparative politics is separate. We're looking at two countries and we're comparing issues or institutions between them. Okay, international relations is going to focus on obviously that relation between those two countries. Okay, now comparative or methods of comparison. Okay, the first one we're going to have up there is going to be comparative method. It's a way to compare and draw conclusions. So an example that I kind of created is, why is South Korea democratic while North Korea is not? Okay, and there's actually some issues within comparative politics too. Usually when people are finding their research, they like to focus on a specific area. So really easy to focus out in Korea because they're two neighboring countries. One country is democratic, the other one is under authoritarian rule. Okay, now in inductive reasoning, so we compare cases for comparative and we draw a conclusion. Why is South Korea democratic while North Korea is not? Inductive reasoning is going to be, we go from studying a case to generating a hypothesis. So if we use that example, we're going to say, okay, we will study North Korea. And when we study North Korea, it leads to the conclusion that nationalism has been central there. And that's the big reason why they do not have, that's why there's been a persistence of non-democratic rule. Okay. Now, deductive reasoning is almost like you're looking at it backwards in a way. Okay. So first, a hypothesis is generated, then studying a case begins. Okay, so we'll start with a basic hypothesis. This is what we think about nationalism, and then we'll test it on separate countries. One of those countries we might test it on is North Korea. Right, so inductive reasoning, you study a case and then you generate a hypothesis. Deductive reasoning, you're going to form a hypothesis first, and then you're going to study the case. Okay? Now, here's just a little flow chart comparing both of them. It just might help you guys out to have a visual that's not in the textbook, and maybe me not explaining it, you might better understand the vocab or the words that are used here. Okay. Now, correlation or causation. Okay. An issue within comparative politics or research in general is figuring out whether or not things are actually related to one another. So like, does one cause the other? Okay. Now correlation, there's going to be an apparent association between the two. Okay. So we're going to look at a couple factors or variables, and it might just be a coincidence. Okay. But we know that there might be some type of correlation between the two. Okay. It would be like a correlation of this would be like, if I'm going to the gym, I'm most likely going to I will look better physically. Okay. Now, a casual relationship will be a cause and effect. So I'm going to the gym, and as an effect of me working out hard, or as an effect of that, I look better physically. I'm putting on more muscle, I'm losing fat, whatever it is. Okay. Now, a question your textbook looks at is, does deductive and inductive reasoning make finding correlation and causation easy? No, it does not. Okay. There are so many outside variables that can mess with your data. Okay. So some of the challenges that you're going to face, number one, is going to be controlling those variables. Okay. There's a lot of things that are out, even if you try to have a controlled experiment, that will naturally mess with your data. Okay. Multi causality is another issue as well. Limits to information and information gathering. We don't always have the best modes of gathering all of this statistics up. Okay. How we access cases, do we have the research money to go travel to that country and get in more of an in-depth research, or are we just going and reading through journal articles or textbooks? Okay. That is going to limit what type of data we actually have access to. Area studies, I mentioned that as well. Usually we get kind of closed-minded and we're like, okay, we only want to focus on Asia. We only want to focus on Eastern Europe, Western Europe, South America. We like to pick and choose where we think we feel more comfortable, maybe gathering information, or where we think is more maybe interesting to talk about or find research on. Okay. So that is going to lead into our selection bias and then endogeneity. Okay. Now, we keep going through this. There's a couple different, there's theories, obviously. Theory is defined as an integrated set of hypotheses, assumption, and facts. Modernization theory, it's a convergence around a set shared of values and characteristics of a capitalist democracy. Behavioral revolution is going to be analyzing individuals' behaviors to generate theories and predict activity on what would lead to the future within that government. Okay. Now, typically, these set values and characteristics are something that are created over time. Now, quantitative versus qualitative method continued. Quantitative is going to be on the left side, qualitative is going to be on the right. The easiest way to do quantitative, or how to explain it, it's just numbers, that's it. We're crunching numbers, we're throwing it in an Excel sheet, we're running it through models, okay? And we're trying to figure out if we can test the theory with the data that we collected, okay? Now, it is very broad though. Like, there's not too much depth that is put into this. Now there is more depth and qualitative with the qualitative method. Now the reason for this is because you're spending time on the ground, out in the field, interviewing individuals, making observations, and you're there within the nation and you're better able to compare and contrast. Okay. Now, there's more of an emphasis on depth. Now, the issue is, though, you cannot collect as much data right here, and that can kind of lead to some issues. Like maybe you're picking and choosing who you're interviewing. So there's different types of biases that can affect which method that you use. One is going to be a little bit have an emphasis on depth over breadth, and the other one have an emphasis on the opposite. Okay. Now, obviously, too, it's much easier for us to get quantitative data, collect numbers, read it through a journal, feed it into this model. Takes a lot more money for the one on the right, and it's very time consuming. Okay. Remember, research is based off of how much money we can actually pull together to actually go out there and analyze things within the world. Okay. And there's also a time thing that will mess with us as well. We might not have the capacity to be out in the country for 6 months or a year. We might not even have access to gathering these interviews. Like how would we go and interview people within North Korea? It's just not something that's realistically going to happen. We have to rely on some of these mathematical models, okay? And sometimes those mathematical models might not be statistics that are actually maybe trustworthy, okay? Maybe the numbers are skewed, okay? So there's all these issues that kind of just proves the point that there's a lot of outside variables that can limit us in the field of comparative politics. And in this class, we'll look at how can we make it more scientific, or how can we get across some of these issues. Now, rational choice or game theory, okay? Now, this is a different way of looking um, maybe at your data or trying to collect data. Now, it studies the rules and games in which politics is played and how human beings act on their preferences. Okay. So it'll analyze things like, how do people vote? Why do people affiliate with a certain party? Okay. If there's a revolution going on, why are people revolting against their government? Okay. Is there protests going on? Are they upset with crime rates? Is there maybe some uneasy feelings on like economic activity? Now, this is based on the sense, though, that we can actually analyze human behavior and they're rational. So we can actually understand why they do things. Now, can we generally just understand humans? Not really. There's a lot of irrational individuals out there. It's also very hard to get people to explain why they do something, okay? Because remember, we are walking amongst a bunch of NPCs, okay? I'm not saying that in a pessimistic way that you should look at people around you and be like, wow, this person is stupid and I'm so much better than them. It's not like that. There are people generally out there that have a lack of knowledge, or maybe don't think before they go out and make a decision when it comes to, and this isn't day-to-day life activities, okay? Why did you run that stop sign, okay? Why didn't you wake up 5 minutes early and you showed up late to work, okay? So if we can't explain why they did those things, how are we going to be able to explain, like, why did you vote for Donald Trump? Okay. Why did you decide to show up to this protest? Okay. Why are you upset with your government? It's very hard to ask some of these questions. Now, for us, we might have a better, some better reasoning to explain it because we understand political science more than the normal day-to-day person. Okay. Now, this is obviously going to be closely tied to quantitative methods. Okay. Now, political institutions, there are two types of institutions. I already went over this. A formal institution will be something like the post office, something like the Supreme Court, and it is based off of official sanctioned rules. Okay, just think of a government building, it's the best way to put it. Okay, or a government process that's put into play. Okay, and there's going to be rules usually around it. Now, an informal institution, I like to use football as an example, American football for us here in America. We like to say like it is like an American game. It defines our national identity. Okay, and it might guide how maybe we carry ourselves throughout society. Okay. um Now, these types of institutions, these informal ones, will embody some of the values that are central to our lives within a country, and they can vary. Obviously, football is big here in America, obviously. Now, for other countries it could be soccer. For other, like the Dominican Republic, it can be baseball. Okay, so it differs from country to country what they value informally. Doesn't always have to be sports, but it is an example that I like to look at. Okay, now, freedom versus equality. Okay, as you add one, you lose the other. Okay, this is something you should have went over in a basic political science class. Okay, obviously in America we value freedom and we put more of an emphasis on that. But equality is still also equally as value. Now, does every single country have the same emphasis on where they're drawing this line at? No. In a country like, once again, we'll reference North Korea just to keep us all on the same page, they are going to reference, or they are going to value equality, and not equality in a good way, obviously. Okay. Most people within the country are living in through some type of poverty or famine. They don't have the best living conditions. Okay. Now, um, this just varies, and it can vary for a few different reasons. The regime that's in charge, the government, the institutions that are put into place, and also the people within the government who are underneath it. They all play a role in what they decide is right or wrong when it comes to freedom versus equality. So, to balance between the two, it is subjective. There is no right or wrong answer. And that will conclude it for chapter one. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this first lecture. I know it's kind of boring because it is the first chapter. There's not really too many moments for me to get animated and, give you really fun examples. I promise you, as the semester goes along and we can get past these basic terms, things will start to become a little bit more interesting. But a real quick tip: I would use this PowerPoint, this video lecture. I would go through the PowerPoint, read the textbook on your own. Definitely go over that before you decide to take your quiz, okay? And then also remember, all questions you see on your quiz are most likely going to show up on the midterm. Not all, but there's a good chance that they do. But if you guys have any questions over the first week of class, feel free to reach out to me, and I hope you guys are enjoying it so far. Thank you, and I'll see you guys in the chapter 2 video.